Welcome to Truth Seekers.
Hello friends, good morning and welcome to the Seiker Podcast on Service of Change Radio, where we challenge reality, question that which has been taught, and hope to inspire a new direction of thought to bring about change. I'm your host, Dennis Nappy II. As always, I am thrilled to be here to start my morning off with all of you this Tuesday, July 14th, 2015. Been feeling really good about doing these podcasts. I received some very nice feedback from a well-respected friend and author of mine. I'm thankful for the feedback that I got yesterday regarding that. I'm a little tired this morning. My little one, my oldest one though, he's just about 3, has some kind of he's a sore throat, some kind of cold that he's dealing with. So we were up off and on all night with him coughing. I've been loading him up on apple cider vinegar. That helps to clear the mucus and boost his immune system. So he actually woke up early this morning. It's now 5 of 7. Normally I have this podcast done by 6:30 in the morning, but he got up, so I've been tending to him. So he's watching his Curious George right now. If he interrupts, my apologies, but fatherhood comes first at this point in the game, well, at every point in the game. So anyway, that's what I've been tied up with, but I'm happy to be taking good care of him. Yesterday was a nice day, for me and the kids. I took them for a walk through our development that we live in, and I reached one point on our walk. We back up to state game lands, and to go home I had to make a right, but every so often I let my intuition guide me, which is a pretty awesome experience. To teach you just how to listen to that inner voice, that other force that exists within the universe. I've had some really neat experiences, and I think it's the equivalent of, and I know not much about it other than what I've seen on TV, but when you hear about the Aboriginal people of Australia taking a walkabout, I remember the movie Crocodile Dundee. He said, he thinks his way through the woods, and he's able to find where he's going. Well, I've experimented with this idea, this concept for quite some time, and it leads me to some pretty interesting places. And yesterday I felt that pull of my intuition, and instead of going right to go home, we already had walked about 1.5 miles, 2 miles. I said, let me go left. I said, there's something down here that's significant. And I, with the 2 kids in the stroller, I made a left-hand turn down this just beautifully quiet woodsy dirt road. And we walked down this, and we got maybe 100 yards, and there on my right-hand side was an opening into a very thick forest. It was a little trail. Now, I've been coming to this area for over 35 years regularly, and I spent, I've lived here full-time for the last 2 years. I know this area very well. Never before have I seen this trail. So I started to explore it with my kids, and we got, again, about 100 to 200 yards in, and it was just such a peaceful, serene spot. And I think I know eventually where it leads to, some spots I used to go exploring when I was a kid. So I look forward to going back there when we're better equipped and better prepared for the hike. And I'll bring my wife. I know she likes to do some hiking as well. But that's just, I think, the benefit of being able to find that inner voice, to find that treasure there, that trail to explore and to hike, and really just to connect with nature and our environment around us. I'm really thankful for that. So when you ever have that opportunity, I've done it while I've been driving. I've done it, while I've been hiking and exploring, and it has led me to some pretty significant findings in my life. Sometimes it's been spiritual insight. Sometimes I've been looking for people. Just last week I was at an amusement park, and my wife and kids went one way and I went another way, intentionally. And, when it was time to meet up, I followed that intuitive feeling through the amusement park, and it literally led me right to her. Now, it may have been a coincidence, may have just been, dumb luck, but at the same time, it maybe not. It worked. So it was a pretty cool experience. So I challenge you to try to listen to that inner voice. For me, it just feels like almost like a pressure pulling me in a certain direction. Sometimes it's saying, go this way, go this way. But usually it's not a voice, it's just a feeling. Let me go this way. But you got to really kind of open yourself up to, all right, I'm going to follow whatever sensation I get and just go with it and just trust it and go with the flow. It was a pretty cool experience. So something to work on, something to think about. And it just reminds me that there's something greater out there that I think deserves more attention. Now, yesterday, this is what I want to talk about today. Yesterday, my esteemed co-host from the Changecast, Joel Shafer, very intelligent man, and he started a thread on Facebook. And I hope I didn't ask his permission to talk about this online, but I don't think Joel will mind. But before I jump into it, if you haven't had an opportunity to listen to some of the insights of Joel, I think he's brilliant. Listen to our Changecasts. You can get it at servicechange.com/changecasts to get our archive page. And just listen to some of the things that Joel has to say and the way he says things. I tell him all the time, his vocabulary is much bigger than mine. So every time we're doing a show, he'll throw one or two vocab words out there that I have no idea what he's talking about. I have to use my context clues to interpret it. I think he's just that smart. But he talked about mythology. And he says that basically, although we don't need mythology, it helps us to understand the why behind why we are here and what we should do while we're here. I'm paraphrasing, obviously based on what he said, but the topic then, the thread then went into people talking about, mythology, the value of it, and then also that, the possibility that, well, maybe not everything we deem mythology is mythology. I don't want to call out everybody else on the thread. I'd love to, but without their permission, I don't want to jump into who else was in this thread. But some very intelligent thinkers and writers and authors were involved in this thread. Just talking about their different takes on it, and I learned a lot just by reading these posts on it, and it just got me thinking about it. And it's something I've considered for a while. Hearing different researchers and investigators talking about, the one stance that, mythology does have a lot of value as it carries a lesson and it carries some wisdom, and it helps us to understand concepts that may be too great for us to naturally understand. They're just too big and too significant. And the comment that I made was talking about the Aztec people, and I came across a thread. It was understanding, or a YouTube video, understanding Aztec symbology, the symbols in Aztec culture. And this man went through and he talked about all the Aztec symbols and what they meant, and he made comparisons, and he was showing these different pictures and then explaining the meanings of these arts, this artwork, Aztec art. And one of the things he showed was, he says, look, we have the blue. It was a little cross. He says, and the left side of this cross is blue, and the right side of this cross is red. Or maybe it was the top and the bottom, but half was blue, half was red. And he says, this represents the masculine and the feminine principle, the masculine energy and the feminine energy. And he says, we've been labeled savages. And then he pulled up the picture of the yin-yang. He says, this yin-yang symbol is the same concept. You have your masculine and your feminine energies that are in balance and in harmony with one another. The Chinese culture has been labeled this beautiful, intelligent culture, yet we have the same concept with just a different picture, and we've been labeled as savages. And he goes on, and I can't do it the justice it deserves, but he goes on to explain their mythology, and he basically says, our mythology, our religion is our science. And as I'm listening to him tell these stories that were myths, I realized that he was explaining a science, the same science that the Chinese Eastern, religions talked about. He's explaining, and then if you looked a little deeper, he showed the connection to modern Western science and physics. And I'm going to have to look this up and watch it again so I can talk more intelligently about it. But they had everything contained in one spot, as opposed to saying, well, this is science, this is myth, this is philosophy, this is religion. They had all one story that they told, and that one story explained everything. And the terms weren't technical, but you could still take away the same understanding and practical application from the stories they were saying, as far as the balance of the energies and the different forces that are out there, things that I think are very advanced for an ancient people to know, let alone even a modern people to understand. So, this thread that Joel started really got me thinking about that. But then there's the other aspect of it, and I've been reading a great book right now by my friend and author Ray Davis. It's called Anunnaki Awakening, and this book goes through the story of, through the Garden of Eden, through the story that the Anunnaki came out of Sumeria. And the quick condensed version is that the Anunnaki, and a lot of this, Zecharia Sitchin made this work popular, but he's not the only one that has done this research on it. But basically the way the Sumerian myth goes, or the Sumerian story goes, is that the Anunnaki came from the planet Nibiru, and they basically created the human race. There was a being incarnate here on the planet Earth right now, and the Anunnaki made that being in their own image. They modified the DNA of whatever being existed here before human beings did. And they made that being as a slave race to help mine gold on, for their planet. There was a problem with their atmosphere. So going through that story, and it gave me a different understanding of the Garden of Eden, and it resonated with me more so than the traditional Bible story, that, well, there was a creator, but that creator created mankind to become a slave. And then I looked into, I know it sounds jarring and shocking if it's not something you're used to hearing, but I then looked into the research of Michael Tessarian. He's out of Ireland, and he's done some great dot connecting and puzzle pieces that he puts together. And I also listened to the oral stories and read the Terra papers of Robert Morningsky, and they report very similar stories. But what shocked me with these stories was that the way we've been told may not be the correct version of the story. And what they basically said was that the Anunnaki created mankind to become this slave race. And now Michael Tessarian goes into it by saying they've done this a few times. And this goes in line with kind of the Mayan and the Aztec myths, that this is the fourth incarnation of man, that the gods tried several times to create somebody that's going to honor and venerate them. And also with the Robert Monroe story I talked about a few weeks ago with Lush, that the creator tried several times to make this perfect product that's going to do what he wished them to do. And what Michael Tessarian talks about is that the first attempt was basically of equal divine spark and intelligence to the creator. And he talked about the Atlanteans from Atlantis. And they eventually said, hey, this isn't working for us. We're slaves. We don't like being slaves. And they just up and left. And they went and founded Lemuria, or Mu, out in the Pacific. And eventually they decide that when the Atlanteans or the Anunnaki, depending on which research that you're looking into, made the next race, I think they called it the Adamu, basically the Adamic race. These people who were made first came back and tried to liberate them. Now, they had an affiliation with the snake. Michael Tessarian, again, talks about the Brotherhood of the Snake, and I'm not educated enough for the finer details of this stuff yet. I'm still, in my process of learning and understanding it, but I'm giving you a general overview, and I hope you go out and do your own research on this. But basically what he said was that these serpent people, which had something to do with their level of enlightenment, being affiliated with the snake was a good thing. They came back and they tried to liberate mankind, and they spoke with the male version of the species, and they didn't really want much to do with it. So they went through to the woman, and they said, "Hey, you're slaves. If you come with us, we can show you a better way," basically. And it was the woman who said, "You're onto something here," who then convinced the man to go with them, and be liberated, be freed. And then this, so the way it goes, and there's similarities between these different creation myths that I'm talking about, but then the way it goes is that, over time, the way the story evolved was that, God, the creator, is all good, and he created man in his image, but man decided that he wanted to disobey God, so he was cast out of the garden forever because Eve was tempted by the snake to eat the fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So the story's been skewed in that, Satan came and tempted man, tempted Eve, because Satan is evil and Satan was against God. But the thought is out there, what if the God that we have come to know through our religion does not have our best interests in mind? And I have to say that with a lot of the research that I've been doing, I'm not saying that if God exists, he is bad. What I do suggest is that the God that we have been taught about does not have our best interests in mind. And that falls in line with everything that I've been talking about our greater purpose in this world. Why are we here? Why have we been created? I think that we're being used for a source of energy, a source of nourishment. And there's a lot more to that. Again, I encourage you to read my free ebook, I Am Human and We Are Not Who We Think We Are, that you can get through my website. But let's think about that for a minute, and let's look at that, whether this is a myth, whether this is a true event. I've seen arguments for both sides, and I go back and forth sometimes because I say, this is too fantastic to be true. This is the ultimate conspiracy. But I think that it is worth our intention, it's worth our investigation, and I think there's a lot of great information out there that talks about this. And if you want to have a better understanding of part of this story, I encourage you to check out Ray Davis's book, Anunnaki Awakening. He was a guest on our Changecast. There's links to his works just through our Service of Change page. I've posted it up on Twitter several times, or you could just Google his name, get his book on Amazon. And he does a great job of explaining this story in much greater detail to give you an understanding of what this story talks about. Is it history? Is it mythology? Is it a little bit of both? I think that, again, understanding our past is really the only way to understand the potential of our future. Because I think that no matter what the truth is, the version we have has been a lie, or we've been misled. And I think we need to look deeper into that and find a greater understanding for our own selves and for our own futures. So that's just about all the time we have today. I want to thank you again for being a part of this Seiker Podcast. Check out I Am Human and We Are Not Who We Think We Are at serviceofchange.com/I Am Human. You can read it for free. I'm Dennis Nappy II with the Seiker Podcast on Service of Change Radio. Get the free app at serviceofchange.com, where small changes among the masses can have a massive impact around the world. I encourage you to keep an open mind and never stop questioning. Thank you.
Welcome to Truth Seekers.